On August 6th, 1945, a nuclear bomb by the name of Little Boy was dropped over Hiroshima by the US military in an attempt to get the Japanese to surrender. An estimated 100,000 civilians were killed by the resulting explosion and following radiation poisoning, despite the fact that only 1.7% of the nuclear material actually fissioned. Now that's what I call a big boom. So yeah, Big Boom, pennutoh's self-proclaimed masterpiece, was released a little while ago, so let's talk about it, I guess.
Can anybody hear me?
So the major thing pennutoh is known for is having great sync in his levels and layouts, and Big Boom is no exception. It does feel very satisfying to watch. The way your character moves with the song feels very natural, and it's clear that a lot of consideration went into the movements you make while playing. However, sync is just one aspect of the gameplay, and to judge it only on sync wouldn't make a lot of sense. I feel like people forget that sometimes. Anyway, Big Boom features these big platforms, aptly named Thing That Makes You Jump, trademarked. Patent pending. You're supposed to hold the button for a little while and release it when this meter fills up to do a big jump. Usually when people implement a gimmick like this in their level, it tends to be kind of buggy, but this seems to be working fine. I think these platforms are a cool concept, but they only get used a grand total of 3 times in the whole level, and the idea is never expanded upon elsewhere, which is a little disappointing. The level has some more gimmicky parts in it. There are some parts where you have to hit a jump ring or else you'll be killed by an invisible wall, even though it looks like you should be able to get past it without hitting them. It's kind of annoying that there's no visual indication whatsoever that hitting these jump rings is required. If you compare that to Future Funk, for example, where there's also some parts where you're required to hit some jump rings, but here there's a clear indication that activating a jump ring opens the path forward. I think Big Boom could have benefited by doing something similar to that. The main issue with Big Boom's gameplay is that the enjoyment is largely sacrificed for the sake of good sync. At every beat of the song there's a jump ring or a portal, or worse yet, jump rings in the portals that you have to hit, which means that you're going to be pressing the button a lot. There's hardly any spots in the level where you can take a breather for a second and regain your focus, which makes the level incredibly stressful to play, which in turn can be pretty frustrating. Another thing that this level does a lot is put invisible portals to correct yourself. This is a sneaky way for creators to avoid buggy situations and to make transitions smoother, etc. But I feel like this level makes use of them a bit too much. It makes the gameplay feel very disconnected in my opinion, because it messes with the flow of your character's movement. Another thing to mention about the gameplay is that it's pretty easy to just skip some parts. You can see Nexus skip this spider section entirely, for example, because there's nothing really stopping him from doing so. There's jump rings you can skip, as well as this robot part that you can just jump over and do as the UFO. I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to take note of. I get the feeling that some of these skips were left in on purpose anyway, because it's hard to imagine that pennutoh was unaware of every single one of them. Lastly, there's some parts in the level where you just get teleported randomly, or there's invisible jumps for no reason, which is honestly my biggest gripe with the gameplay of this level. I really don't like it when my character makes movements that are completely inexplicable because there's some invisible bullshit. This part has to be the biggest offender of that. If you jump into this wave portal, you can do this section as the wave, which is admittedly a cool idea, but the wave is crazy hard compared to just letting go of the button and magically going up inside this block to do a single jump with the robot, which is much easier. There's little point to having multiple paths to choose from if one is so much harder than the other, unless you maybe can get a coin, but that's not the case here. By the way, another problem with this part is that it's nearly impossible to tell what kills you and what doesn't, so you just have to kinda guess where the hitboxes are, which is incredibly annoying. I think Big Boom does some things right, but ultimately I'm not a big fan of how this level looks. The design itself is pretty good, even though it's not exactly dripping with originality. It uses a lot of the standard objects, and as a result it looks very much like an actual Geometry Dash level, kind of like how RobTop would make them if he tried to build something much more complex than his own levels. And Big Boom achieves this aesthetic without looking boring like some other levels tend to do. There's a lot of attention to detail in this level, not only in the way the blocks are designed, but also in the way the level is structured as a whole. For example, there are some off-screen parts where you can see portals and jump pads and stuff, but it's not actually part of the gameplay. This makes the level feel a lot more open-ended. It makes it seem like there's whole sections of the level you never get to see because you can't access them. But of course that's not really the case. I think the greatest weakness of this level is the colors. For the most part, this level uses darker, more desaturated colors, like a brownish orange and a dark red, and I don't think they really go well with the design of the level. I think more vibrant colors would have worked much better, and roughly halfway through the level that point is illustrated perfectly since it uses bright and lively hues of purple and blue. And in my opinion, these parts look the best because of that. Something I do like about the colors is that there are some subtle hue changes. Having every single object be roughly the same color can be pretty boring, so this is something I really like. Still, some of its punch is lost due to the dark desaturated color palette. So yeah, to finish this off, I'll briefly mention the song, I guess. I fucking hate it. Sounds like a bunch of farting noises and it's not pleasant to listen to at all. I guess that means that pennutoh just has a bad taste in music. And I guess now is the time for me to hand out my verdict for this level. The level is decent, but much like the bomb that was dropped over Hiroshima, it doesn't quite do the job for me. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Big Boom. Let me know what you think about the level as well in the comments. I always enjoy reading what you guys have to say. Make sure to join my Discord server too. It's pretty epic. Link is in the description. See you in the next video.